Breaking news for Indiana Fever fans. Lexie Hull is moving on. The two-way wing, who's been a steady presence beside Caitlin Clark, has decided to leave Indianapolis. And the reaction across the WNBA community has been immediate. How did we get here? What went wrong for the Fever this season? And what does this mean for Caitlin Clark, the roster, and a franchise still trying to find stability? Stay with me as we break down the full picture. Before we dive in, make sure you like this video, subscribe for more WNBA news and analysis, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates this offseason. Drop your take in the comments too. Did Lexie make the right call? And where you think she lands next? Let's start with the player at the center of it all, Lexie Hull, often misspelled online as Lexie Hull, closed the season sounding every bit like someone preparing for a fresh start. She was candid about her status as a restricted free agent and said she's loved her time in Indiana. She talked about building a life in the city, praised the fans, and showed appreciation for franchise. But the tone and the language told a larger story. She acknowledged the uncertainty of the offseason for the entire league. And when an athlete leans on phrases like, "we'll see what comes," often signals a decision is already in motion. In this case, it's clear she's ready to move on. That decision stings because of what Hull represented on the floor. She wasn't a player you judged purely by the box score. She brought energy, toughness, and defensive versatility that doesn't always show up in highlights, chasing shooters over screens, switching on to bigger scorers, diving for loose balls, and keeping possessions alive. In a season where the Fever dealt with injuries, shifting rotations, and constant outside noise, she became one of the few steadying forces. Whether she started, came off the bench, or filled a different role from one week to the next, she kept showing up and doing the work. In a league where depth and chemistry can swing games, that kind of presence is invaluable. Understanding why this decision hit so hard requires zooming out to the Fever's full season. It was a grind. There were injuries to key pieces. There were nights when rotations changed on the fly, and lineups were shuffled to compensate. There was a daily spotlight that follows Caitlin Clark wherever she goes, bringing more media attention than this franchise has seen in years. That can galvanize a locker room, but it can also cause fatigue when it's not matched by on-court cohesion. Through it all, Hull remained adaptable. In her exit comments, she emphasized how much her role fluctuated, guarding different positions, taking on different responsibilities, and being flexible depending on the night. That's the public version of a truth players feel deeply. It's hard to build rhythm without consistency. If you listen closely, you heard that fatigue. It wasn't dramatic or combative. It was composed and honest. Hull said she was proud of the group and proud of how they fought through adversity. She thanked the fans. She talked about loving the people around the organization. But she stopped short of committing to the franchise's direction. The distinction matters. Loving your teammates in the city is not the same as believing the program is stable enough to grow your career. Her tone suggested she was done riding the roller coaster and ready for a new situation with clearer structure. There's also a larger league context at play. The WNBA offseason is unusually complicated right now. The current CBA includes an opt-out point that has people across the sport discussing the possibility of labor tension as early as 2026 if a new agreement isn't reached in time. Players are talking openly about pay, travel standards, and long-term security. That uncertainty influences decisions, especially for those entering free agency. When Hull said this offseason is very uncertain for the entire league, she wasn't exaggerating. She was reflecting a reality that every veteran and young star is weighing as they plan their next move. Which brings us to a key development, Unrivaled. Hull expressed excitement about joining the new offseason league recently launched by Nafisa Collier and Brianna Stewart. That's significant. Unrivaled is designed to give top women's players more control, increased visibility, and alternative earning power during the WNBA offseason. For a player like Hull, who thrives in high-tempo, defense-forward environments and wants consistent reps, the format could be an ideal fit. It also signals where players' heads are at. They're diversifying their options. They're building leverage. And they're prioritizing platforms that feel professional and player-first from day one. On the Fever side, Hull's exit raises immediate basketball questions. She was one of Indiana's best perimeter defenders. She brought communication, and effort on switches. She was the person who kept energy up during bad stretches and made winning plays that don't trend on social media. You can replace scoring in this league more easily than you can replace that kind of glue. The front office now has to ask, who defends the perimeter the way Hull did? Who brings that level of urgency without the ball? Who accepts a fluctuating role and still finds ways to impact the game every night? Those answers will define Indiana's offseason. This is also about Caitlin Clark. The Fever's franchise centerpiece is heading into her second pro year with the spotlight brighter than ever. Hull wasn't just a teammate. She was part of Clark's inner circle in the locker room, someone who shared the burden when the cameras were rolling and the questions got pointed after tough losses. When Clark drew double teams, Hull was often the cutter who provided the outlet or the defender who took the toughest wing assignment so Clark could conserve just enough energy for late-game offense. That chemistry matters. It doesn't get measured, but it changes outcomes. Losing that support system means Clark will have to navigate even more on her own. That could be a challenge, or it could be the moment she fully embraces the leadership role that comes with being the face of the franchise. Last season, she reignited interest in the Fever and the WNBA, selling out arenas and driving record ratings. This season, the job expands. It's not just about the shooting runs, the deep threes, or the pinpoint passes. It's about daily consistency, setting a tone in practice, mentoring rookies, and forming new partnerships on the floor. When a trusted teammate departs, the responsibility to rebuild chemistry falls on the star. That's the next step for Clark. To be clear, none of this is about blaming a single person for a turbulent season. It's about acknowledging how the pieces fit and where they didn't. The Fever's coaching staff tried countless lineups to survive injuries and performance dips. Some nights it worked. Other nights, it felt like a team still searching for its identity. Hull's role changed constantly. Sometimes a spot-up shooter, sometimes a wing stopper, sometimes a switchable forward asked to bang with bigger players. She handled it without complaint, which is why her departure lands as a warning sign. When a player that team-oriented decides to leave, it signals that the day-to-day frustration outweighed the optimism. Fan reaction has mirrored that complexity. Fever fans are invested. They've packed the building, lived with the growing pains, and celebrated the flashes of progress. The news that Hull is leaving hit hard. Some supporters are simply disappointed. Others see it as a business decision in a league where opportunities are limited and careers are short. But there's widespread agreement on one point. This affects Caitlin Clark more than anyone. Trust in a locker room isn't automatic. It's earned over time. Hull was part of that trust network. Moving forward, Indiana must prioritize players who complement Clark's game and character. Tough defenders, reliable shooters, and steady voices who don't shrink in big moments. There's also the media narrative to consider. The moment Hull signs elsewhere, the hot takes will fly. Does no one want to play with Caitlin Clark? That storyline is inevitable, but it's also unfair. Players choose teams for many reasons: roles, coaching, health, pay, market, and family considerations. Hull's admiration for Clark has never been in doubt. She spoke genuinely about how tough it was to see Clark battle injuries and keep showing up. That's not shade, that's respect. Her decision isn't an indictment of a teammate. It's a choice shaped by a season of instability and a league in transition. From a roster-building perspective, the Fever front office has work to do. Indiana needs wings who can defend and hit open threes, bigs who can run and protect the rim without clogging driving lanes, and a bench that can hold leads when Clark sits. They need to reduce lineup churn, establish roles, and put players in positions where expectations don't shift weekly. That's not a criticism from the cheap seats. It's a blueprint every rising team must follow. Continuity matters in the WNBA. Chemistry wins in the WNBA. The teams that stabilize their rotations in June are the ones that make real noise in August and September. There's a positive path here if Indiana acts decisively. Free agency presents options for 3 and D wings. The draft can add length and athleticism on the perimeter. Development programs can turn current role players into reliable rotation pieces. The Fever also have something many teams wish they had: a headlining star who raises the ceiling every night, and a fan base that is re-engaged with the product. Those are real assets, but they only pay off if the supporting cast fits. For Hull, the next chapter is intriguing. In Unrivaled, she'll get touches, pace, and a chance to showcase the full scope of her game. She'll sharpen her offense in a setting that rewards versatility and aggression. That could translate into a stronger market in WNBA free agency, where teams value wings who guard, cut, and hit open shots without needing plays called for them. If she lands with a franchise that provides consistent role and a clearly defined defensive identity, she can thrive. Her competitive core, what Fever fans loved, travels. It's worth noting that Hull kept her departure dignified. No shots at the organization, no finger pointing, just appreciation for the city and the people who supported her. That matters in a small league with long memories. It leaves the door open for future respect, and it models the kind of professionalism young players watch closely. In a time when social media can turn every decision into a headline, taking the high road still plays. The Fever, meanwhile, should take this moment as feedback rather than failure. Players want stability, clarity, and growth. When a reliable veteran, and yes, Hull is still young, but she's been in big game environments since college, chooses a different path. It's a prompt to review processes. How can the team tighten rotations earlier? How can it create more predictable roles? How can it ensure that high-effort defenders are rewarded with consistent minutes and a system that maximizes their strengths? Those are solvable questions. The off-season is a time to answer them. As for Caitlin Clark, this is a test and an opportunity. The spotlight won't dim. Expectations won't shrink. But the kind of leader she becomes now will shape how the Fever are perceived by free agents and the rest of the league. Teammates follow stars who listen, who elevate others, and who set standards that are tough yet fair. Clark has shown she can electrify a building. Now she can show she can anchor a program that involves recruiting in free agency, connecting with new teammates, and building a team culture where glue players like Hull not only sign but stay. One last point about the broader WNBA landscape. With the CBA chatter in the background and new ventures like Unrivaled gaining momentum, this offseason is as much about the business of women's basketball as it is about X's and O's. Players are thinking long-term: equity, scheduling, travel, and media coverage. Teams that acknowledge that reality, invest in player experience, and communicate a clear vision will have the edge. Indiana has a chance to be one of those teams. Hull's departure is a setback, but it can also be a pivot point. So, where does that leave the Fever today? With a hole to fill on the wing, a fan base expecting progress, and a generational talent ready to take another step. It leaves them with decisions to make in WNBA free agency and the draft, with an eye toward role definition and defensive identity. And it leaves them with a simple mandate: back up the buzz with basketball that looks organized, resilient, and ready for the postseason push. For Lexie Hull, it's the start of a new chapter, one that could showcase her game in a fresh light and position her for a strong return to WNBA action. For Caitlin Clark, it's a leadership moment. For Indiana, it's time to build a roster that makes sense around its star and prevents more departures like this one. Your turn. Did the Fever do enough to convince Hull to stay? How should Indiana replace her two-way impact? And what does this mean for Caitlin Clark's second season? Drop your thoughts below. If you found this breakdown useful, hit like, subscribe for more Indiana Fever updates and WNBA free agency analysis, and tap the bell so you're first to know when new news drops. The off-season just started, and there's a lot more to come.